Okay, so now we're looking at the next step in the crop cycle. Today is Thursday, April 30th. At least I think it's Thursday. The days all just meld into one now. These crops were sowed last Friday. Just a quick recap again. We did wheatgrass and sunflower. Wheatgrass, they both soaked for about an hour in warm water. This wheatgrass is 175 grams of seed. The sunflower is 125 grams of seed. So we've done our germination stage. We've uncovered the crops. The wheatgrass got uncovered after 3 days. The sunflower got uncovered after 4 days, and we're just actually at the start of the 5th day. Now, usually I sow my crops in the morning. And the reason I do that is so I can include that whole day as sort of day one of the cycle. So when it goes to the next day, we're starting day two. We're really in the middle, in essence, right now of day 5, I think. It's not until the end of the day that it's through. So it's why I like to sow in the morning. It's easier to keep track of the cycle. But because I'm just doing home production, I'm really just observing to see where things are at. So today is now watering day. The wheatgrass has been uncovered for a few days, the sunflower for a full day. And so now it's time to water. And I've talked about watering quite a bit. Watering is very tricky. There's no rules because it varies by crop, by season, by soil mix, by point in the cycle, by climate, temperature especially. And so in the winter, sometimes in a commercial system, you're watering, once every day and a half, and sometimes in the summer you're watering twice a day. So these things are all really variable. So you really need to be paying attention as a grower to when crops need water. But there's indicators. The obvious indicator is your crop is wilting. That means you've left it a little too long. The other thing might be you're watering too much and you've got very moist soil. You would actually start to get like a rotting smell as well. Often that's because you've got too much water in the soil and then you're getting anaerobic conditions. So watch for that as well. So we've got our 2 crops here, and the things I look for are the weight of the tray. So I'm looking at how heavy that tray is because I know how much a saturated tray feels and I know what an empty tray feels like. And then I'm looking at the top of the soil surface, and I can see the top of this surface is quite dry. So I know this is ready. I also know I haven't watered it in 2 days, so I'm just kind of keeping track of that. So our wheatgrass I'm going to stick in there. I've got 2 trays here that allow me to water from below or to water from above without getting water all over the place because I'm working in a kitchen space here. Sunflower, same thing. I can feel this one has more weight in it, so there's more water in this tray. But I've not been particularly happy with this crop. It's growing fairly well, and after this watering it'll take off. But you can see we've got some germination issues here and up here, but in the end we'll still end up with a good crop over that. So, and I can see with my sunflower, I can still see moisture on top of the soil, whereas the wheatgrass is completely dry on top. So there's a lot of debate or conversation around whether to water from above or to water from below. And this is another thing that really varies by crop and that you should do according to your system, and you should be trying both to understand what the differences are. I really like watering from above because when you're watering the crop, you're also washing the crop. And I find with crops like sunflower, it actually helps with removing the hulls as well. So there's a lot of people who say, don't water from above, you're going to get mold, you're going to get disease issues. That's not really the case. And in fact, if you're getting mold and disease issues, it's not because you're watering from above, it's going to be a combination of factors. You're watering above, so there's more moisture on the foliage. There's not good airflow. Your humidity is too high. There's going to be multiple things usually. So do what works for you. And I actually do a combination of methods. What I'm going to do with the wheatgrass, actually, is what I do is I water a bit from the top. So I start getting the water moving down. And then I actually just fill up the trough so it waters from below. It's a little too much on there. So I'm kind of working from both ends. The idea of watering anything from below is that the roots work their way down to the water. Whereas if you're watering really shallow on the top, then what happens is roots don't go very deep. Now that's not as big an issue when you're growing in a controlled system like this, but when you're growing in the ground, that can be a major issue when you get into times of drought. So again, just a little more on top. Okay. So I'll just let that sit. The water is going to work its way down. It's also going to work its way up. Now water moves through a process of osmosis where it's going to move from areas where there's more water, like this puddling, into areas where there's less water, like the dry soil. Now sometimes when your soil is too dry, it really takes a long time for it to absorb the water because it gets hydrophobic. And that can happen with peat soils quite easily. So actually watering from above there is going to allow some of the water to work its way down, and then the water working its way up, it's like it joins up with the water, and then it spreads through the soil more easily. So it's one of the reasons I like a combination actually of watering above and below. The sunflower here, I'm going to water this one from above. Now, as I mentioned, I can already see moisture in here. I can see there's moisture in here. I can feel the weight on the tray. So it doesn't need a lot of water, but I want to give it some water because I like the fresh water. The crops really appreciate that. It's been about a day and a half since it was uncovered, so it's not had water since then. I just give it a little bit of water when I uncover it from germination. So this one we're just going to we're kind of just freshening it up. So a little bit of water on there. And that's it. So that's all I'm going to do for the sunflower. I'm going to leave this. Now it's Thursday. At least I think it's Thursday today. Boy, I really hope so. So this now is not going to get harvested till Saturday, so it's got a few more days of growth. This one should get harvested tomorrow evening. So this crop is going to almost double in height between this morning and tomorrow evening, which is 2 full days basically. So it gives you the sense of the rate at which things grow. Hi in Belgium. Let's see. I guess it's evening in Belgium right now. I'll try to do the time change here. So yeah, so we've got our sunflower here. It's got some fresh water, and I can feel the difference in the tray already. And one of the reasons I can really feel it, this is kind of getting into like body ergonomics. Like I'm leaning over to lift up this tray. This is actually quite a difficult position for my back. So when I lift this, it's quite a strain. Now before it was a little difficult, but now it's like, okay, there's water in there, it's got weight, it's fine. So I'm not worried about water in this crop. One of the reasons I added a little bit of water for that sunflower, even though there is water in there, is actually a couple of reasons. As a reminder, the sunflower is growing on a heat pad. And because of the heat pad, you're going to get much more evaporation from the soil surface of water, and because the crop is going to grow faster, theoretically, you're going to get more transpiration from the leaves. So what it's going to do is it's going to go through that water a lot quicker. Now the wheatgrass is growing quickly. It just doesn't seem to use as much water as the sunflower. And this is one of those things you get to learn over time. Like sunflower in hot conditions, you can almost watch the water be drained out of it. It uses it up so quickly. But wheatgrass is kind of slow and steady and just moves along, so I'm not so worried about it. What I'm starting to think about with my wheatgrass is I'm going to harvest this tomorrow. And I always want my tray to have a good amount of water in there when I harvest. That's going to mean, and it has to be done before harvest because there has to be time for the plant to start really absorb that water and make sure there's a lot of water in the cells. So water in plants creates a condition called turgidity. Like that pressure of the water is what holds the plants up. And so if there's not enough water in your soil come harvest time, the plant's not very steady, it's not very secure, so it might flop over a little bit, it might not cut very nicely. So having a well-watered tray at harvest time is super important. It's going to give you a much easier cut, and it's going to give you a nicer crop that's going to store better because there's good moisture in there. I had another point that just slipped my mind. Yes, this is actually going back to sunflower, and it varies with different crops. If at harvest time, actually at any point in the crop cycle, if your tray gets too dry, what a number of the crops do is the roots will start sticking to the tray. And so what happens is once you pull the growing mat out of that tray, you end up with these roots kind of glued to the tray. So if you're in a commercial system, that means you're going to spend much more time cleaning those trays. So what we would do is we would take those trays, we would soak them, then we would go at them with a brush, then we would spray them down, and then we would put them into a sanitizer. Now, if the crop stays well watered throughout the whole cycle, then I'll just pull that root mat out. There'll be nothing in there, which means I can spray it down and then sanitize it. So it actually, by having a well-watered soil throughout the cycle, it reduces your tray cleaning time by about 2/3. It's a significant difference. Now that may not be a big deal if I just have these 2 trays to clean, and to be honest, in my home system, I don't always clean them. I just go right into the next cycle. But for commercial production, your trays need to be very clean so they can be sanitized well. You cannot sanitize a tray properly if there's still soil in it. So you need to clean the soil out and then do the sanitizing. And so if you're trying to do 200 or 300 trays at a time in your wash, and you've now tripled the time that you need to wash because roots are stuck to the tray, that's a cost, that's time, it's just a pain. So that water control actually reduces your washing time on your tray. So that's very, very important. You can't always do that, but in general, if you let the soil dry out too much, you're going to increase your tray watering time, or your tray washing time, sorry. So one of the reasons I'm blabbering on here is because I'm trying to give my wheatgrass time to absorb this water here. I watered a bit from above, a bit from below. I see the water level here is going down a little bit. So I'm just going to pick this up and give it a feel. That feels pretty good. I can actually tell it can absorb more water, but we don't need to fully saturate the soil. So this one's good, and it's going to head back in here. Right back on there. Now, I said earlier there were 2 points I wanted to consider with the sunflower in the water, and I didn't get to the second point. The second point is, the first point being the heat mat. The second point is it's nice weather right now, so it's going to be a warmer environment in here, which means you've got the heat mat from below, the warmer environment in general, so the transpiration rate is definitely going to be much higher. We're going to see today and tomorrow really important stage of growth in the sunflower because they're really turning green. They're really going to come up. The leaves are really opening up now. So the water, there's going to be a lot more water use. So just being really mindful about that. So here's where we're at in the cycle. It's Thursday, April 30th. We sowed past Friday. So today is the kind of day 6. Or is that right? Yeah, day 6. The wheatgrass is going to get harvested on day 7. The sunflower is going to get harvested on day 8, maybe day 9. We'll see how it looks. So what we're going to do is tomorrow evening, we'll follow up here. We'll take a look at this wheatgrass and give it a harvest tomorrow evening. The sunflower we'll just check in on it, and then it'll be Saturday evening before we do the harvest there. So hopefully by seeing these videos in succession, you're getting a chance to see what the cycle looks like. What's the rate of growth you should be expecting? How often should you be watering? Once again, these will vary per system, but I think for a lot of people it really helps to see everything being laid out. As I've mentioned earlier, my next series is going to be a series about different experiments you can do to start to determine what's going to work best for your system. Now, what has prompted me to do that series, besides the fact that, like many of you, I'm spending a lot of time at home and needing things to do, I participate in a lot of online forums, and I see 2 things happening. One is I see people asking very bad questions, which means incomplete questions, just like, what do I have mold in my wheatgrass, what do I do? Well, that doesn't really help. There could be a dozen reasons why. And then you get answers from that incomplete question saying, you need to water less, you need to do this, you need to do that. And so you're getting questions that are incomplete, that don't provide very much information, and then you're getting answers which are giving responses based on that incomplete information. And so because these are often very complicated things to determine, the answers are not actually helping the question asker. So I think it's important to ask these questions and to get feedback from the rest of the growing community about what to do in certain situations. But because each situation is unique, it's really important for you to learn to do experiments yourself, to determine things like how much weight should I use for covering, how much soak time, how does soak time affect growth, how long should I leave things covered, things like that. So we'll do a series of experiments that'll show different results, and then you're going to start to get a sense of, oh, okay, I see how this plays out. Now I can start doing these experiments at home. So hopefully that helps people just manage their system better and troubleshoot better. Because the growing cycle in general is quite easy. The idea is, one, how do you avoid problems? And two, what do you do when you come up with problems? And that can be the biggest challenge. So the more you grow, the easier that gets because you get so familiar with your crops and the cycles. But for beginning growers, that can be quite a challenge. So we'll start that one in about a week or so, but we'll finish up this cycle tomorrow and Saturday. And yeah, hopefully that gave you a little bit of insight into watering. I do have a few other videos on YouTube talking about watering, and I do talk about it in my online courses at microgreens.teachable.com. So happy growing, good evening, or enjoy the rest of your day depending where you are. Hopefully you found that useful, and we'll see you again tomorrow.